Hi, good morning, welcome. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll do roll call and everything else. All right. Oh, Jesus. It is going to fall over. Flag is there. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hi. All right, we do actually have a packed agenda. It's nice to see so many familiar faces and some folks we haven't seen in a while, so hi. We do have a packed agenda. I am actually going to turn the entire meeting over to DISH's Executive Deputy Commissioner, Terry O'Leary, who will take it from here. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, everybody. We're going to start with a roll call. We'll go alphabetical order by agency name. Aging.
Present.
Ag and Markets.
Present.
OCFS.
Present.
Docs.
Present.
DCJS.
Present.
Department of Education. ESD.
Present.
NYSERDA.
Present.
DEC.
Present.
DFS.
Present.
OFPC.
Present.
OGS.
Present.
DOH.
Present.
HCR. DISH's is present. ITS.
Present.
Department of Labor.
Present.
OMH.
Present.
MTA.
Present.
DMNA.
Here.
Parks.
Present.
OPWDD.
Present.
Port Authority.
Present.
Public Service Commission.
Present.
State Police.
Present.
Department of State.
Present.
Thruway Authority.
Present.
DOT.
Good morning, we're here.
Office of Victim Services.
Present.
American Red Cross.
Present.
And 211.
Present.
All right. And immediately next to me, on behalf of the Executive Chamber, is the state's Chief Disability Officer, Kim Hill. So we do have a packed agenda. We're going to start with a weather outlook. Obviously, the weather, we're going to follow up afterwards with a little bit about drought. We've been in a rapidly onsetting drought conditions over the last 70 days or so, which thankfully we got some snow. Unfortunately, it really hit a couple of areas pretty hard, and our partners in the utility industry did a great job of responding in the Southern Tier and Hudson Valley over the weekend. But to start, we're going to have, I see Steve is up at the podium, and I think is Chris Gittro here too, Steve, or is it just you?
He's here. I'm going to do the presentation.
You got it?
I got
All right.
it.
Steve DiRienzo from Albany NWS. Over to you, Steve.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. So I'll just get started here. We've got the winter outlook and some recent precipitation information from last week.
Steve, we cannot hear you if you're not right in the mic. Sorry about that. The
No problem.
HVAC in this room is loud.
That better?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. I don't know, maybe I'm just hitting the wrong button, but it's just not working, so we'll move on here. All right, so we'll start out with we'll look forward initially here. So this is the forecast for temperature and precipitation for the next 6 to 10 days. A lot of blue on the map. Looks like we're going to be below normal temperatures for at least the next week. Next slide. And if you go out to 8 to 14, we're still below normal. So the primary impact of it will be cold weather, obviously, below normal temperatures, and the lake effect machine will start to go. So expect some lake effect snow and snow in other places as well due to the cold temperatures. Next slide. The monthly outlook for December shows near normal temperatures. Again, December is the primary month across New York for lake effect snow, and so I would expect that to be a consideration for the upcoming month of December. And it looks drier along the coast, which isn't good, since that is the area of the state that has had the least amount of rainfall and is the driest at the present time. Next slide. The seasonal outlook for the winter, Odds are that it's going to be above normal, so once we get past December, maybe a moderating trend. And then precipitation-wise, further west you go, the more likely above normal precipitation. Most of the state, though, near normal. Next slide. Probability, we had quite a bit of precipitation last week, and I'll show that on the next slide, I think. But go back. I'm sorry. This is the probability of at least a half inch of snow, or excuse me, a half inch of rain, liquid equivalent precipitation during the upcoming week. And most of the state, it's 80 to 90%. We expect some precipitation events to occur tomorrow, and then again on Thanksgiving Day, and then lake effect into the weekend. So there will be some precipitation upcoming this week. We'll continue to help work on those drought and fire weather conditions. Next slide. The drought monitor, this is the U.S. drought monitor, has part of the state in D2. The southeastern part of the state, again, has been driest. Further north and west you go, the less of the impact on the dry conditions. Next slide. Unfortunately, with the update that was put out, the National Climate Center and the drought, working with the drought monitor, they do not expect the drought to completely disappear during the winter, through February. This goes through February 28th, so through the winter months. They do not expect the drought to completely disappear in New York, except for the far western areas near Lake Erie. There's a little sliver of dry conditions out there, but they expect that to improve. However, for the southeastern part of the state, they do not expect the drought to improve. Next slide. Rainfall from the past 5 days, including that big event that had the snow with it, the rain and snow last week. Most of the state had 1 to 3 inches of rain, so big damper. The maximum report I think I saw from the New York State Mesonet was almost 4 inches at Tannersville and the Catskills. Good place for it since New York City's water supply is down there. So we definitely put a big dent, 2 to 2.5 inches of rain, New York City, Long Island. So fire weather and again the drought, we made some improvements. Next slide. Next slide. Rainfall, normal rainfall for December and January is on the order of 4 to 8 inches across the state. So if we get normal rainfall the next couple of months, we will improve the drought conditions. And we'll take, the only issue is if it's mostly frozen precipitation, we may have to wait till spring, till it melts to actually see the big improvement, especially with groundwater. Next slide. So again, we had widespread rain, 1 to 3 inches in the past 5 days. Reduced the deficits from the past couple of months to 4 to 6 inches below normal. Normal precipitation is about 4 to 8 inches during the next 2 months. So if we can get normal precipitation, we'll go a long way into removing the drought conditions across the state. And I think that's my last slide. Next slide. It is just the contact information. I'll take any questions if there are any.
Any questions for Steve? So very selfishly, Steve, you mentioned weather on Thanksgiving and this weekend. Do you have any more detail? I know, particularly for lake effect, it's early, but what are we looking at during the holiday and immediately after?
There's a threat of a storm on Thanksgiving. Right now, there's so many different solutions. I would say probabilistically, here locally, if you look at the probability of 6 inches of snow, it's about 30%. If you look at the probability of 2 inches of snow, it's about 60%. That's in the Capital District. So it looks like there's going to be a storm sliding off to our south on Thanksgiving Day. Again, the solutions are all over. It could slide completely south and nobody in New York State gets much of anything, but we are looking at some precipitation. As far as lake effect, I think we're going to need yardsticks to measure the snowfall in parts of New York by Sunday. So, I mean, just looking at the cold temperatures, that's just a normal thing when it gets that cold. So, other questions?
All right. Steve, thank you as always, and thank you to you and all your partners at NWS for the ongoing partnership. It's much appreciated.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. So we heard a little bit about drought. The next couple of presentations are going to be on the drought. As you know, DEC declared that we are in a drought warning, and we'll hear from DEC in a bit. Before that, though, our Deputy Director from the Office of Emergency Management, Jen Waka, is going to present, because one of the things that happens when we are in a drought watch and a drought warning is the state's drought management task force starts. And this is one of the places where the Disaster Preparedness Commission becomes operational. It's about more than just drafting plans and partnering, there are actual statutory obligations that the DPC has. It may come to pass, although we hope it won't, that you may be asked to vote on next steps when it comes to the Drought Management Task Force. So I know we always pay attention, but this is one in particular where you may be asked to vote on something in the near future if we do not get out of this drought. So with that good news, Jen, I'll kick it over to you.
Good morning. How's the audio first? Okay, thank you. Good morning, Commissioner Bray and members of the DPC. Thank you for the opportunity to kind of review and set the stage for the state's drought management framework that we work within. So Executive Order 116 was put into effect in January of 2002 and remains in effect, which established the state's Drought Management Task Force. That task force is chaired by the State Office of Emergency Management within the Division of Homeland Security and has 5 total voting members of that body, inclusive of the Department of Environmental Conservation, Department of Health, Department of Agriculture and Markets, as well as the Thruway Authority, inclusive of Canals at the time. So Canals is also a member and considered a member. That executive order established 4 stages of drought, which we're going to review. Those are watch, warning, emergency, and disaster. It also assigned an expectation for a drought management plan, which is maintained by the Office of Emergency Management, that is representative of the state's drought management approach, and that is available on the DISH's website. And of kind of our transition into this current period, DEC declared the initial drought watch several weeks ago, and that commenced bi-weekly meetings of both drought management task force members, and then a secondary bi-weekly set of meetings inclusive of additional partners such as the National Weather Service. Okay, working on the pointing technique. So of those drought stages, the first is the drought watch that is declared by DEC, and currently there is a drought watch established for all of the areas in yellow on the map here, and that is based on the drought regions. Essentially, it is a notice to water suppliers and public collectively that there is a developing drought conditions. Secondly is the drought warning, which is now in effect for drought regions 2 and 2A, sort of New York City up through mid-Hudson and some of the Catskill area, the orange area that you can see here. That is notice of impending and imminent severe drought conditions. And thank you to Steve and Chris for the precipitation that is helping to kind of alleviate some of the conditions. But it remains a messaging to the public and public water suppliers to, conserve. It is all voluntary. It does not implement any mandatory actions. The 4th and 5th stages, or 3rd and 4th stages, the drought emergency. We are not presently in a drought emergency. That, unlike the prior 2, which are declared by the Department of Environmental Conservation, the drought emergency is declared by the Disaster Preparedness Commission. So members of the body here, it is a recommendation that comes from the Drought Management Task Force to the DPC and would be voted on for if there was a determination to go to this elevated level. This is a notice of existing and persistent drought conditions. Again, it is primarily focused on messaging and a cue to water suppliers and agencies to work through their plans for mandating restrictions. kind of a note around that process is that would be a recommendation made to the DPC Chair, Commissioner Bray, from the Drought Management Task Force. A meeting of the DPC would be convened, and then members would receive the briefing and the recommendation and come together to make a determination on that. While current conditions are, favorable for not progressing, it is an important opportunity for us to understand that if members are called in a kind of a timely way, these are some of the things that may be brought forth for decision. The fourth stage is declared only by the governor, and that is when there's truly an understanding that the drought conditions will need state resources and personnel to support local, activities in responding and managing water under the drought conditions. Any questions for me before we transition back?
You mentioned voluntary for the first couple. Under drought emergency, does it become mandatory savings?
I heard the first part of your question, if you wouldn't mind.
For drought emergency, does it become mandatory?
So it is still, it's a notice for local water resource agencies to mandate conservation and implement other emergency response measures. It would be aligned to the specific water suppliers' plans and requirements. It is not a state issued mandate at that emergency level. It's a trigger that falls within those localized plans. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Appreciate it. So one of the things to keep in mind is the agencies on the drought task force that Jen talked about. Once we reached warning, they are already working with their local partners. So the Department of Health, they oversee and work with local water and municipal suppliers, right? And they're getting projections from those individuals now, those organizations, if the drought conditions don't subside, how long can you continue to provide water? And those municipal water suppliers are then working with their larger customers, agricultural customers, manufacturing customers, industrial customers, to understand what their usage is as well. On top of that, one of the things that we're going to be asking everybody else to do now is, at your own respective agencies, think about your water usage. There are no restrictions put in place by the state right now, but how do you as an agency use water? How can you conserve water? What are the small ways that you they're small steps, but at an enterprise level can really change what you're doing? The city, which is in a bit of an advanced stage of drought because they are within the one DEC region that is experiencing drought, and they get all of their water from the other region that is experiencing drought. They've taken the steps that they're not washing their cars as often. The MTA is going to back off a little bit on their cleaning pattern. And they're messaging that, so people will expect it, but it's small steps like that that really help to conserve water. So we would just ask everybody here, go back, look at your agency, and what are the small changes that you can make. We're hopeful that we do see average precipitation over the winter, and hopefully we get through the drought, but we need to prepare that we wouldn't. This fall was a lot drier than we were expecting, so we need to be prepared to not come out of this drought very quickly. With that said, I will now kick it over to the expert who actually talks to us about the science behind this. You'll see that watch and warning are both determinations made by the DEC, and that's very much a data-driven decision where they look at all the different sources and they determine whether or not we are in a condition. Emergency and disaster obviously take into account other things such as water usage and conservation that involve messaging and changing behavior. But in terms of the conditions that got us here, the Drought Task Force has very much been relying on Brennan Terrier from DEC, who is here to tell us about the conditions. Brennan, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Next slide, please. Part of Executive Order 116 that Jennifer described directed DEC to develop a drought forecasting plan. Despite its name, it's not a crystal ball. It it essentially assesses current conditions with a very near-term outlook on the meteorological forecast. There is a project underway with Cornell University and Northeast Regional Climate Center to develop more of a far-looking tool using climatic outlooks and longer-range meteorological forecasts, but that's not active yet. It's under development. The drought forecasting plan, it assesses the current situation based on historical records. All the parameters are evaluated differently during the different seasons. And also, during discussions with the Drought Management Task Force, we do sort of look forward towards the 7 to 10, 14-day outlooks. The drought forecasting plan takes 4 hydrological parameters: the precipitation, stream flow and surface water, the groundwater, and then lake and reservoir storage. Each of these parameters is scored for each region and then weighted according to a regional scoring, because different drought regions have different reliance on the different parameters. For example, Long Island is especially reliant on groundwater. Each of these scores is weighted according to their regional weighting, and then the sum of the parameter scores determines the drought index for that region. Important to note that the scores are not absolute. During discussions with the rest of the Drought Management Task Force partner agencies, we get reports back from those agencies on what conditions and concerns they've been hearing, any local reports if there's focused areas of water shortage, and then the trends, if something is a rapid onset or if we see something getting better just over the horizon, that might adjust the decision of DEC. The DEC declarations are primarily based on the index with those input from partner agencies. Next slide, please. After a Drought Management Task Force meeting on November 2nd, DEC declared a drought warning for regions 2 and 2A. 2 is the lower Hudson and Delaware River Basin area, and then 2A is that area served by New York City and the New York City outside communities that get water from their system in Westchester. Concurrent with this, on November 2nd, New York City declared a drought warning for their system. Next slide, please. On the 18th, again after a Drought Management Task Force meeting, DEC declared a statewide drought watch based on worsening conditions and intensified the drought status for regions 2 and 2A to warning. Again, concurrently with this, New York City declared a drought warning for their system service area. Along with that, they declared a pause in their Delaware Aqueduct repair project. So they're bailing out of their repair project for the Delaware Aqueduct, and they expect to have it back online, transporting water by mid-December. There's a Drought Management Task Force meeting scheduled for tomorrow. The updated data with the precip that we saw over the last week and weekend will be included. Again, we'll receive information from our partner agencies, any local reports, and discuss the situation and bring it back to DEC for a decision. I don't expect anything to change right now. The precip we got over the weekend, as Steve said, it sort of it buys us time. It doesn't have us exit the drought, but it's not getting any worse. It'll take, again, several months of normal precipitation to get us out of the drought. Next slide, please. And here's a slide that just kind of shows the stimulus we got from that precipitation. In about mid-August, we were in a normal, possibly wet normal pattern. We had good precip numbers, good stream flow numbers, but after 2 months of no rain, it was getting pretty dry out there. A lot of our natural unregulated stream gauges were getting close to the 95th to 97% exceedance, so a drought you'd expect to see every once 20 or 30 years.
Can you just explain to us how to read this chart for those of us who haven't seen it?
Sure. These are the stream gauges for drought region 2, which was in warning as of last week. And then you see right there on about the 21st, we got 1.5 to 2.5 inches of rain in southeastern New York. And that's shown in the stream flow gauges. When it rains, that water shoots off, especially we're in a leaf down situation. And the stream flows double, triple, some are even more than 3 times what they were a week ago. This is what we want to see. This is one of the parameters that goes into the index calculation. And you can see we're starting to see that natural recession of the hydrograph there, especially on that blue line. So they will come down, but like I said, it's buying us time, this precip. If we get another inch over the next 7 days, that would help a lot, either if it's in liquid or solid form. But again, our takeaway is pretty similar to National Weather Service's set point. This is kind of persisting, but not getting worse at this time. And again, the next meeting of the Drought Management Task Force is tomorrow, and we'll discuss it there and bring it back to DEC for a decision. Any questions?
All
Thank you.
right, not seeing any, I just want to say, Brendan, thank you very much. Learned a lot over the last couple of weeks. You've taken the time not only to do the work, but also explain the work to those of us like myself that didn't fully appreciate all that went into measuring this. So I just want to say thank you very much to you. I know your director, Karen Stainbrooks, here as well. It's been very helpful to understand exactly the science behind this and what goes into it. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So next, we're going to move to guidance for essential travel during emergencies. Presenting will be our Deputy Commissioner for Community Preparedness, J. Matthew Clancy. He's going to talk a little bit about the work that all of your agencies did to help implement a statute that was signed last year by the governor. Sir?
Terrence, thank you very much. Good morning. As Terry mentioned, Jim Clancy, Deputy Commissioner at the Division of Homeland Security. I am responsible for community preparedness, so this is right up my alley. As Terry mentioned, in December 2022, Governor Hochul signed into law a bill that has become known to many of us as the Essential Travel Ban Bill, which mandated that the DPC opine on exemptions for essential workers travel, that is, for essential workers during emergency travel bans. According to the sponsors, this was intended to allow utility, and other workers to travel during state or local travel bans. As all of you know, this is no easy task, right? No two emergencies or declarations are the same, whether it be snow, rain, heat, smoke, and or man-made events. And not to mention, local municipalities determine travel bans on non-state roads. So the document before you right now that hopefully is in front of everybody, I believe it is a final guidance for those local entities that are planning emergency response, including travel ban decisions. Office of Emergency Management, under the direction of Commissioner Bray, undertook the task of stakeholder outreach, data collection, and compilation. State agency representatives on the DPC were convened for a briefing and request for input. We need to hear from you folks. Specifically, what workers would you consider essential during any type of emergency? As you can see by the list in front of you, it is quite extensive, but we feel it gives local government leadership a starting point and direction to formulate their own local process, which many counties and municipalities have already begun. In addition, there was some outside stakeholder engagement, including discussions with representatives of the retail, shipping, and communications industries. This document will be made public before close of business today. We will be posting it on our webpage. We'll also be sending it to local emergency management managers as well as local government leaders. I want to thank you and your staff for participating in this process and helping us get to this final stage, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Terry.
So one thing that I'll point out is what we didn't do, and this is in large part, and what the DPC didn't do, and this is your staff, is create an actual list of individuals who, for any emergency, under any circumstances, will have freedom of movement and not be subject to travel ban. And in part, the reason is you never know what the emergency is going to be, right? If it's a snow emergency and hospitals are open, well, then nurses and doctors may very well be essential and need to get to the hospital. If the hospital doesn't exist, if the roads don't exist anymore, having people out is problematic. And therefore, creating a single list of people who under all circumstances would be exempt was something that everybody, all the experts in your agencies agreed we just couldn't do. It would be problematic, and a realistic but hopefully unlikely scenario could be thought of where that would occur. One other thing that I will say that kind of was a part of all of this is every time we would be approached by an organization or a field saying you need to exempt these individuals from travel bans, we would always say, well, give us an example of when it was a problem. And I will say the discretion that is shown by law enforcement, local, county, and certainly our partners in state police for enforcing those travel bans has been exemplary, because it's the same 3 examples over the last 15 years that get brought up. It's really a problem that's real, but it is something that with all disasters beginning and ending local, the solution needs to be local. And so in large part, I think, Jim, this is fair to say, correct me if I'm wrong, we relied on, in part, what Erie County has been doing given all of the snow emergencies they've been having.
That is correct, and I think it's even noted in the guidance that we recognize the efforts that Erie County has put into this process, being that we've been there several times in the last 2 years.
So every year, the division will do training at NYSAC for county execs and their staff on their powers under Article 2B, their executive powers. And this is one of the things that we will be talking to them about. If you're going to issue a travel ban, you need to put thought into who you're going to exempt from that travel ban and why. So your staff is already, and many of you at the table have been a part of this decision and discussion. If there are new things that come up, you should float those, right? Your agency is a part of this board, this commission, for a reason. Please share with us concerns, questions, what you're hearing from your stakeholders, because we want to make sure that the people issuing travel bans are including those concerns in their actual order, and whoever they may determine is essential for the duration of that emergency.
Well stated.
Jim,
Thank you,
anything
Terry.
I missed?
Nothing.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so next, we're going to talk about access and functional needs. So access and functional needs, you know, before we get there, this lovely little plaque here, while it's sitting in front of the commissioner and I, is the state's accreditation from the Emergency Management Accreditation Program, EMAP accreditation, which is something I learned about when I first came to the division almost 9 years ago from Kevin Wisely, as he was having staff work on this. And the amount of work and effort that it goes into having the state be accredited it's tremendous work. It's good for 5 years, and we just received our reaccreditation very recently under the guidance of Matt Franklin, our current director, and Jen Waka, who oversees planning. But this is done with each and every one of your agencies as well, because we have to show proficiencies in different areas that we earn accreditation. So it's a very nice plaque. I think it's Jen. She's going to take it back. But if you would like to display it for a day or two, I'm sure we can do like a Stanley Cup loaner program where you can take it and have your picture taken with it. But in all seriousness, it's something that reflects the hard work of this agency. Working with other states, we have a fantastic emergency management apparatus which extends well beyond our Office of Emergency Management. It's because of the partnerships at the table, and this accreditation is a part of that. Part of our accreditation is demonstrating proficiency with access and functional needs in New York State, something that we've always done enough to check the box. We have in both messaging, in working with our local partners, making sure that we are aware of our citizens that have additional needs, parts of the disability community or other communities that are at risk in a disaster, is very important. And it's something that we have spent additional time on over the course of the last year with an OEM, and we've been very pleased to also partner with the state's Chief Disability Officer, Kim Hill. So a couple of the things before I turn it over to Kim that we've been doing at the state level is we reinvigorated an old dormant FEMA program that was incorporating access and functional needs into emergency management. And we had a training, our friends in California have a very active program. They came in and helped train us for a little bit, got us up to speed, and made sure that we're asking those questions that need to be asked that we may not be thinking about. If you look at any research when it comes to disasters, it is very clear that a disaster of any type will be more lethal and more dangerous to members of the disability community. And that's something that we as emergency managers in each one of our agencies needs to be aware of and needs to be attuned to. How can we add? What are those barriers? What assistance do we have that we could offer? We do a very good job here in New York, but we can always do more. And so we wanted to take the time during the DPC to have Kim talk a little bit about what her and her staff are working on. And also, this is going to be an ongoing conversation where we're going to be talking with each of you about what more can we do and what else, how can we improve the state's efforts. So Kim?
Good morning, everybody. Terry, Commissioner, thank you very much for having me. While I'm going on a quick overview of what our office does, I have 3 of my team members. I'm going to ask all 3 of you guys to kind of move your way up to the front so that you can present from the lectern up there. So first of all, I just wanted to touch on briefly who we are and what we do. The Office of the Chief Disability Officer was created in February of 2022 by Governor Hochul to focus on all of the needs and priorities of the disability community. We work obviously very collaboratively with OPWDD, OMH, OASIS, OCFS, and since we have come on board, created a lot of great partnerships with a lot of other agencies as well, including DISHES, so we're very, very happy to be here. We touch on a million different priorities depending on the day. Our main priorities, though, I would sum up to be employment, housing, home care, transportation, emergency preparedness, and accessibility overall. We have the responsibility of chairing the most integrated setting coordinating council for the state, of which we are required to put out an Olmstead plan. For those of you guys who are not aware, the Olmstead plan is going to be a result of a 1999 Supreme Court decision that requires people with disabilities to be served in the most integrated setting appropriate to their needs. We do have an emergency preparedness committee that we are launching as part of the MISC. So I think our offices will work very collaboratively with that. Our work on employment includes a Medicaid buy-in expansion and implementing Executive Order 31 and Executive Order 40. Executive Order 31 commits New York State to being a model employer in New York State, and I have been in touch with someone from every one of your offices, if it's not you. But if any of you guys have questions on bringing people with disabilities into your employment ranks, we are the people that can help you. Executive Order 40 commits New York State to becoming an employment first state, and that was just signed about a month ago. We will be in touch with many of you over that as well. In addition, we have a couple of different sub-offices that we have created within our office. First, I'm going to ask Chris Woodfill and Rachel Cahill to come up. They're going to talk a little bit about our Office of Deaf, Deafblind, and Hard of Hearing.
Sure, I'll just stand right to the side of the podium, and I'll let my interpreter use the microphone. I'll introduce myself. My name is Chris Woodfill. My sign name is CW on the shoulder here. I'm the Executive Director of the Deaf, Deafblind, and Hard of Hearing Office. This is my staff interpreter, Rachel Cahill, who is my administrative assistant and advocate for language access as well. So our office, again, the New York State Deaf, Deafblind, Hard of Hearing Office is responsible to do the similar work that Kim has mentioned, focusing on employment and housing and transportation, all of the things that Kim mentioned for the deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing. Our office is, again, within the Chief Disability Office, which is within the Executive Chamber. Our office also oversees the IAC, or the Interagency Coordinating Council for services to people who are deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing. Hopefully soon we'll have our council reestablished. The council was originally established many years ago and then wasn't meeting for several years. Hopefully we'll reenact that council here soon. And our office works very closely, working on the priorities, again, that Kim and the Chief Disability Office work on: employment and education, emergency preparedness, of course, and just to let you know of the type of work that we're doing. Also to let you know, 2 states, the state of Rhode Island, and also the state of North Carolina, do have one individual specifically focusing on the deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing within emergency services and disaster preparedness. So potentially that would be nice if we had someone similar here in New York State. That's my plug. But no, the goal of our office is to, really the bottom line, again, to take down barriers for people who are deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing, for them to access services and to have a better quality of life here in New York State. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris and Rachel. So just for all of you here today, if you have any types of needs that revolve around deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing, please feel free to reach out. Mary Beth is going to give us a little bit of a recap of our brand new Partnership for Inclusive Internship program.
Hi, thank you all for giving me a few minutes on your agenda today. My name is Mary Beth Schneider, and I work with Chief Disability Office and Department of Labor on an initiative called Partnerships for Inclusive Internships. And essentially, my job is to help people with disabilities find internship opportunities in New York State government. So we've been working on this project since April, starting to have a lot more agencies come on board, including civil service, who already has actually had an intern and hired that intern, OPWD, Department of Motor Vehicle, OGS, and I just met with Dishes on Friday, so I'm very happy with that meeting as well. So the thing that's a little bit different about this program is that the interns that I work with can be students, certainly, but they can also be anyone who has a disability, who's at least 18 and who's currently supported through Access VR or Commission for the Blind. So my interns are right out of school sometimes they're students, sometimes they're a person who has a disability later in life and couldn't return to their previous career. So probably a couple things that you want to keep in mind is that the interns are paid internships through Access VR or Commission for the Blind, so the host agency does not incur the cost of having an internship. And really, these opportunities can be based on anything that is meaningful work or a highly in-demand position in your organization. So anything from, my first intern did clerical and administrative assistant. We have somebody doing policy research. We're just onboarding somebody today who's going to be doing project management. And then also some facilities work as well, so it could be anything in between. I have currently about 15 interns that are really eager to get started, so I'm really looking for the opportunity to speak with you, reach out, learn a little bit more about the program. If you have some ideas of things you want to think about, you want me to help you think through, I'm happy to do that. And besides, all your friends are doing it, just want to say. Thank you.
Before you go, could you just state your name and maybe contact information again, because I can't read it on the slide there.
Yeah, it's Mary Beth Schneider, and my email is marybeth.schneider, that's SCHNEIDER, @labor.ny.gov.
We will share the 2 slides with the contact with the entire DPC list. So.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mary Beth. So I'll do my shameless plug that I did at our last quarterly MISC meeting as well. I just challenge all of you to entertain the idea of getting an inclusive intern and working with Mary Beth, ideally. This program is really going to help bring people into state government and hopefully be able to onboard them full time. So if anyone has any questions about our office in any way, I'm happy to answer. And I think we've had 2 slides here. All of our contact information is on both of them, should you need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. So working with Kim, one of the things that we did last year in the budget, Governor Hochul committed to expanding the State Office of Emergency Management. And very thankful for the FTE, which will be both in headquarters and in the field. But we're hiring a dedicated access and functional needs officer, along with staff to support that function, to make sure that both in the state, our operations, but also where we can help partner with county and local emergency managers as well to share best practices, information, to do the research and provide some of the answers that are needed to be more effective. So our partnership with Kim has been fantastic so far. It's been young, but it's been fantastic so far and very, very helpful for us. So I just want to say thank you to Kim for everything she's done so far for us.
Thank you. And this announcement is one of our favorite this year. So thank you both for making this happen. And next year, we'll be very excited to get it up and running.
Thanks, Kim. So before we wrap up, I just want to talk very quickly. I see Commissioner Mahar over in the corner, and we had 2 presentations about DEC, one by DEC, but I will say for us for the division over the last 3 weeks, we've been dealing with DEC not only on drought, but on the wildfire. And there have been, I think, 60 wildfires this year. We had a large one in Ulster. There's about 650 acres called the White House Road Fire, which for us is large. Oregon had one that was a few 100,000 acres, but they have a lot more land, a lot less houses. And then we had the Jennings Creek fire in Sterling Forest State Park, right on the Jersey border. And our partners in the response to that, because it wasn't just a wildland fire, right? When we were impacted by the smoke from Quebec and Canada last summer, that was burning in such a remote area that they couldn't get to the fire. There were no roads to get there, right? It was all being fought through the air. What we saw with the Jennings Creek fire, it burned backyards. It came over from the forest, and on the one side, you had the town of Greenwood Lake, and it went down to the Jersey border. On the east side, it actually came within a half mile of the Jehovah's Witness World Headquarters, which has a few museums, about 800 residents, and it is their seat of operations for their worldwide church. And the difference between a wildland fire and a wildland urban intermix fire is night and day. I'd heard Western emergency managers talk about it in Idaho, California, and elsewhere, but it was something to see how layered and complex it became, particularly when it started to get to people's homes. Schools were closing. State Ed became a good partner in working with the superintendent from Greenwood Lake. So we don't have a presentation, but I do think it's worth a tip of the cap to all of our partners. I will say state police were there with the aviation units from the beginning. They were also on the ground with local law enforcement, doing awareness, door-to-door, knocking on doors, talking to residents. DEC and Parks, they were fantastic, had folks on the ground from day one, while DEC's rangers were everywhere doing everything. They found more resources and came in and did a great job of responding. DOT brought bulldozers to help create fire lines. Unfortunately, the terrain was not amenable to it. It was too rocky, too mountainous, but they were there to help as well. National Guard brought big helicopters. So, General, you can correct me. I think the state police were there from the start, and Colonel, I believe it's about 200 gallons each. Just under 300, which that's a lot of water. And then the National Guard brought Blackhawks, which could drop about 660 gallons. And then they brought Chinooks, which, how much? 2,000 gallons. I think they lowered it because they were doing the math between refueling and taking them out of circulation. But the amount of work that did, it was fantastic. And it had a real effect because about a week after people were paying attention to the fire did what it does. It jumps lines. and it jumped a containment line and was getting very close to two neighborhoods in Greenwood Lake. It led to voluntary evacuations, which were assisted by state police and others. But because of all the water that state police and the National Guard were dropping, it created what they call a wet line. And this is something that all the rangers were explaining to me over the last week, something that we learned. It made a difference. No homes burned. We walked through backyards with the county exec and their county emergency manager, and we had over 430 volunteer fire departments from throughout the state, not getting paid, showing up. And everybody knew they'd show up on the weekends, but then the week started and they had to go back to their real jobs. They continued to show up time and time again. And our Office of Fire Prevention Control runs the mutual aid plan for fire. They were able to pull people all the way from Mattituck out to either Cattaraugus or Chautauqua County, but across the entire state. Over 1,300 volunteer firefighters came and helped Greenwood Lake. It was a lot of work. It was a learning experience for many of us, but the work that was done by those agencies and others, ITS creating a GIS map showing us where the containment line was, where the wet line was, where the evacuation zone would be, that type of information and partnership amongst the DPC agencies was fantastic. So I just wanted to take the time to say thank you to DEC for their leadership. They were the incident command for this, but also all the other agencies that stepped up and helped out. It made a difference, and despite one of the largest wildfires in New York history and us getting our first fire mitigation grant from FEMA, an emergency grant to cover it, no homes burned. We unfortunately had a death very early on, a Parks employee, Dario Vasquez, who was helping clear. He passed away, was killed as a result of an incident, and there was one other minor injury. So a true tragedy, and it was a testament to your agency's support of the Vasquez family, Parks in particular, but OMH and others that provided assistance. But overall, the response by the DPC agencies was fantastic and avoided what could have been a much, much worse disaster. So for that, you know, at the division, we'd just like to recognize the agencies that participated and say thank you. So I think that is the run of the agenda, Commissioner. Anything?
No, the general has some really cool photos of the Chinook, so check them out.
They are fun to look at.
They really are.
It's very impressive what they did and how quickly they spun up and were able to help us. So with that, I'd like to wish everybody that isn't involved in snow and ice response a happy Thanksgiving.
And everybody who is, I'm sure will be, you know, sharing turkey.
We will be talking. So thank you very much. And until our next meeting, which will probably be pre-hurricane season, hope everybody has a good holiday season. We'll see you then. Thank you.